Hello and welcome to episode 93 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. My name is Sigmund Judge and I am joined once again after what has felt like way too long. My podcast partner and co-host, Mr. Devon Dundee. How are you?
Hello, Sigmund. I am back from paternity leave. I am honestly not particularly well rested, but I'm excited to be here, and I can't wait to dive into the world of Apple TV with you. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, just to say, maternity leave couldn't have come at a worse point from a podcasting perspective, right in the middle of summer, which meant it was very difficult to get guest co-hosts during the time. So apologies to our subscribers, but pushing that to one side, what an exciting time it is for Apple TV right now.
Yes, there's so much happening right now, so much for us to cover. We've got a really packed show this week, including highlights from Sigmund's tvOS 17 review, our thoughts on the new iPhones and the way they can be used for filmmaking, new release dates and recaps from the world of Apple TV. But first, we've got two big highlights for you this week for the week ahead, starting with one we've looked forward to for so long, Sigmund, and that's Killers of the Flower Moon. When oil is discovered in 1920s Oklahoma under Osage Nation land, the Osage people are murdered one by one until the FBI steps in to unravel the mystery.
The Osage. Their land has oil on it. Money flows freely here now.
I do love that money, sir.
This wealth should come to us. Their time is over.
When this money started coming, we should have known it came with something else. We're still warriors.
I ought to kill these white men who killed my family.
Now, Killers of the Flower Moon makes its international theatrical debut next week, but Sigmund, you were fortunate enough to attend its UK premiere last weekend at BFI London Film Festival. So tell me, was it the masterpiece that we've all been willing it to be?
In short, Devon, yes. And so much so, I have plans to see it again on release day on London's biggest screen at the IMAX in Waterloo. This is written by Eric Roth and based on the book of the same name by David Gran. It's brought to the screen by Martin Scorsese, arguably the first head you'd put in a Mount Rushmore of contemporary filmmakers. His catalogue of films includes Silence, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, The Last Temptation of Christ, The Wolf of Wall Street, Taxi Driver, Casino, Mean Streets, The King of Comedy, After Hours, Gangs of New York, and Kundun, amongst many others. Beyond that great deal of work, Martin Scorsese is also a great film historian, with his love for filmmaking only seconded by his love for story. Yet this film may just end up being his most important from both a historical and cultural perspective. Much like some of his notable previous work, Killers of the Flower Moon is an American true crime story, this time centering around the Osage tribe in the United States who were murdered under mysterious circumstances in the 1920s, sparking a major FBI investigation involving J. Edgar Hoover. Yet, when I use the term American true crime story, it's important, I think, to note that this is not a mystery, but instead a brutal blow-by-blow retelling of the poisonous, jealousy-driven ambition that drove white settlers to profit from and eventually seize the wealth of Native Americans in Oklahoma, resulting in the deaths of at least 60 wealthy Osage people during what is known as the Reign of Terror. After oil was found beneath the Osage Nation's reservation, which they bought and therefore belonged to them, in the 1890s, that land brought in about $400 million annually by today's currency standards. And by the 1920s, it transformed their lives and turned them into what was then considered the richest nation, clan, or social group of any race on Earth, including whites, man for man. But still, the prevalent attitude held was that native people needed white oversight in order not to squander that wealth, going so far as to have US government laws also historically consider Indian tribes to be dependent nations in need of federal protection instead of empowerment. One such man with those same beliefs is William Hale, played by longtime Martin Scorsese collaborator Robert De Niro, a rich, wealthy, influential man, and also the uncle of the story's main protagonist, Ernest Burkhart, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. He is a young man in his 20s returning from service and trying to find his way in the world, who soon becomes the driver of an Osage woman called Molly, played by Lily Gladstone, before developing a romantic relationship. Here's just a little clip of how that relationship begins.
He told me you was going with Matt Williams for a time.
You talk too much.
Oh, I don't talk too much. Just thinking who I got to beat in this horse race, that's all.
I didn't realize this was a race. I don't care for watching horses.
Well, I'm a different kind of horse.
Onkashi. Shomikasi sheko shiajimi.
What was that?
Shomikasi. That's how you are.
I don't know what you said, but it must have been Indian for handsome devil.
Now, the clip sounds like everything is fine and dandy, but it's actually all just part of a grander scheme to grab part of the Osage people's fortune. And Ernest isn't shy in saying so. And he's not alone, as more and more white men marry to Osage women for the same reason, some going as far as having children and plotting to also kill their own flesh and blood in pursuit of greed. Interestingly, this story wasn't the original scope of the film, with DiCaprio originally cast to play the detective investigating, but the change makes for an honest representation of what happened and a more captivating story not seen before, with DiCaprio at his most maniacal. And this may just be Leonardo DiCaprio's best performance, and yet the name you will hear again and again, Devon, over the next few months and into award season is Lily Gladstone. At 3.5 hours, she's given the time to deliver a performance that equals and then outshines her seasoned on-screen collaborators. It's her journey from love to pain and betrayal that is often delivered to screen with just a look. Combined with the equally harrowing score from the late Robbie Robertson, those silences demands those watching to witness the carnage of a tribal community transitioning from harrowing isolated moments to big energetic scenes that very few directors of today can pull off. It's 3.5 hours and many will ask whether they should wait for the film to stream on Apple TV+, but this is a film that I think demands your unrivaled attention and an immersive big screen presentation. Just go in with an empty bladder, is what I would say. Does Killers of the Flower Moon ask a lot of its audience? Yes. But I'd argue we owe the original inhabitants of America, at minimum, the time to relive and learn about the atrocities committed against them. If you don't have your ticket yet, go and get your ticket now, ahead of next Friday's release.
Well, you've definitely sold me, Sigmund. I need to get online and get my ticket booked. I'm definitely going to take to heart what you said about not drinking too much before going in. I have trouble sitting through a 2-hour movie, so this is going to be fun for me. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that this subject needs that time and in order to tell the story fully, and I'm thankful that they're giving it that time. Based on just how impressed you are with it, I can already tell this is going to be a powerful film that a lot of people are going to really love, and honestly, all of us need to see. As you said, it's a story that needs to be told. And so I'd also encourage everyone to get out to the theater and see this one. It's Apple's first big theatrical push in all kinds of places, not just in the big cities. And so I hope it's a success and that lots of people go out and see it.
Do make your way to the biggest screen you can. But I would say equally, stay at home for another highlight. This week, lessons in chemistry. In the 1950s, Elizabeth Zott's dream of being a scientist is challenged by a society that says women belong in the domestic sphere. She accepts a job on a TV cooking show and sets out to teach a nation of overlooked housewives way more than recipes.
Let's begin, shall we?
You're on the verge of a major breakthrough. We have rules.
You're firing me.
I would like to offer you a job. You are poised to become a TV star.
Are you concussed?
No.
You've got the platform. What you say matters. Children's at the table. Your mother needs a moment to herself.
This is created by Lee Eisenberg, with a cast of Brie Larson as Elizabeth, Lewis Pullman as Calvin, and Aja Naomi King as Harriet. Devon, I know this is one that you've been really looking forward to talking about, and this is a show that I was able to see a preview of earlier this week, as well at BAFTA in Piccadilly. Tell me your thoughts on this 2-episode premiere that's now available on Apple TV+.
This is one I've definitely been looking forward to, based mostly on Brie Larson's casting. I think it's cool that they got her in a series and in this role. It's a great fit for her. I think it's different from what we're used to seeing her do. It's a lot more rigid and maybe awkward, but I think she does a great job. I would say that I'm glad they did a 2-episode premiere. I feel like this one, it really takes 2 episodes to really tell you what the show's about. Once you've seen those 2, I think it really does hook you. I like that it takes a physical-like approach in that it starts at the end with Elizabeth hosting her cooking show, and then it rewinds all the way back to the beginning to show how she got there. I thought that was really effective with Physical, which is, of course, another female-led series set in the 70s, but following some similar themes about female empowerment and things of that nature. So I thought it was interesting that narratively it also takes a similar structure where she starts the series in a very different place from where she ends up. What I really loved about these first 2 episodes, though, is the lovely, awkward chemistry between Larson and Pullman. And I use that word chemistry, very specifically. Of course, the series is about chemists, and Brie Larson's character, Elizabeth, is a chemistry technician in a lab where she's not taken seriously because she's a woman and she doesn't have a PhD. And women can't be chemists. And so even though she's trying to do all this research, she's obviously brilliant and she has all these great ideas. No one recognizes what she's doing and gives her any credit until she meets Calvin, who is kind of a pariah in the lab. He's this eccentric genius who works on his own and doesn't really get along well with others, but he ends up meeting Elizabeth and actually seeing her potential as a chemist, and really tries to help elevate her and get her recognized for her work.
And where things change in their relationship is, and this is crazy to think that this was something that was accepted back then, and actually up until recently, probably last like 10, 15 years, pageants. There was a moment in time where women representing their departments would compete against one another in a pageant, where, yes, they would talk about what their dream holiday is when they get married, what their special talent was, which a lot of women went along with at the time. But for Elizabeth, this is incredibly demeaning as a feminist. And just before her moment to show off her talent, which ends up being a scientific experiment, she comes across an ill Calvin who has allergies that react in him throwing up everywhere in front of everyone. She takes him back to his house because he is a runner and a walker, not a driver, makes him a cup of tea, and she tells him some home truths. She doesn't like him because he has all of this opportunity and he's almost squandering it because of his self-perceived entitlements. That soon changes when They start talking at lunch. She starts giving him some real food, whereas he's relied on peanuts every lunchtime up until then. And in return, she's able to actually talk about true scientific matter, and he sees the potential in her. And that is a common theme across lessons in chemistry, especially the second episode, which we'll get into in a moment. I was very fortunate to take part in a Q&A session with Natalie Sandy, the executive producer of the show, alongside Sarah Adina Smith, who's the director of the first 2 episodes, and Catherine Smith, the production designer. And I asked this question. There's a common theme in terms of realising someone's potential. And I wanted to ask who was the first person to really understand your potential in your respective careers, and if there was one thing they taught you that you were able to bring forward to this project.
What a great question. Who wants to take that then?
I'm going to take this only because it relates to the show. What a fantastic question. I think probably not the first, but the most meaningful person to really believe in me, I think is our showrunner, Lee Eisenberg, for me. I've been working with Lee over 6 years, and I've had essentially the opposite experience of Elizabeth Zott with Lee, in that he has always elevated me and pushed me to produce and work on projects beyond what I think I'm capable of often. And I think by throwing, he's thrown me in the deep end in a beautiful, trusting way that has allowed me to work on shows like this. It's just, I think, it's wonderful to have people in your corner who believe you can do it, and you just have to act as if until you can. I think that's probably what I would say.
The person who came to mind for me was my high school English teacher. I in high school thought I wanted to be an actor at the time, and which is an amazing career, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it was just that I didn't even know there were other options, actually, when I was growing up and just looking around at I think I was looking for what's a career where women are as successful as men. And from small town Colorado, it was like, oh, there's a Best Actress award alongside a Best Actor at the Oscars, so that means they're equal. So I just thought that was the career path to take. And he was the first person who was like, have you ever considered being a director? And I think I even was like, no, at the time, my place is on the screen. And I think I just director. I didn't even know what a director was at the time. And so I look back on that really fondly. And I think the thing I took with me from him was just in the English class, he always taught me to think about story really deeply. And I think that's my biggest job as a director, is to find what the heart of the story is and protect and serve it throughout the process of making a show.
Kat, did you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. I would say I took a class in set design for theater at Berkeley, and that professor, Henry May, really was a huge influence on me. He had on his walls all sorts of certificates from the Emmys. He'd been nominated for things like Omnibus. And I loved that class, but I thought it was like an easy art class, basically. They used to call it like a Mickey Mouse class. And I was in architecture, and I had the exact opposite experience. It was a guy who's the professor, and he was about the same age, and he was like the negative impact on my life. He said, get out of architecture, get into art, because architecture is a business. So that's how I ended up here, really. I mean, I loved film too, but he was great. He was fantastic.
Send him the blueprints of the stages.
Yeah. I mean, sadly, that guy probably is no longer with us.
That is absolutely devastating news.
It's something so dark. I was like, leave it on his headstone.
but I love it.
A great moment there, Devon. But tell me about the second episode, because I feel like it brings in an extra element to the show that maybe isn't shown in the trailers that we've seen up until the release of Lessons in Chemistry.
Well, in addition to all the chemistry that we see in the lab and outside the lab, there's also some broader, of course, social commentary going on about gender relationships and female empowerment, but also around racial discrimination in the 1950s, especially when it comes to housing. And so the neighborhood that Calvin lives in is thought of as maybe a lower class neighborhood within the city, and they're actually trying to basically bulldoze the houses and turn it into a freeway. And so Calvin's neighbors get involved in this movement to try to fight the city and stop this development that's happening. And Calvin, yet to be seen to what extent he'll be an ally to them, but he at least ideologically agrees with them. And so I think that's going to be an interesting question as the series goes on. But that is another highlight of the first two episodes, is the performance of Harriet, played by Asia Naomi King. I think she's a great addition, and I'm excited to see where they go with her, because I think that is another important element to include. And I just appreciate the way that they're using this story to represent the struggles that people were going through at that time and still have relevance today. On a lot of fronts, Lessons in Chemistry is a great watch. We highly recommend checking it out. And of course, it makes its global debut with its first 2 episodes this weekend on Apple TV+. Now, Sigmund, I was scrolling through my RSS reader last week. And you know, I am an avid reader of MacStories. I read just about everything put out on the MacStories website, and I saw this article entitled tvOS 17, the MacStories Review. Now, I'm very used to seeing iOS, iPadOS, macOS, the MacStories Review, but I have not seen a MacStories tvOS review in quite some time. So imagine my surprise when I tapped on the headline and I saw the byline, and it said, by none other than yourself, Sigmund Judge. Pretty incredible to see you write and publish the MacStories review of tvOS 17. Of course, we talk about tvOS all the time here. We've been covering the changes to tvOS 17 over the summer, but to see it all distilled into that article, it was just a really cool moment, and I highly recommend those who haven't had a chance to read your review yet, definitely go check it out. Of course, we'll link it in the show notes. You hit a lot of different points throughout the article, and of course, these are things our readers will be familiar with, but you go really in depth on each of these, like the new control center, all the different options there, the profile switching, and all the different controls, including accessibility controls, which are a great addition in Control Center. Of course, you talk about FaceTime and continuity camera, and all the little bits and bobs there, like SharePlay and the reactions and all that great stuff. VPN support coming to tvOS, long awaited. Great addition to the platform, and you go into different ways that you're using that. And of course, you've always got notes on the TV app and suggestions for the video player. But you end your review in a really interesting place, and a spot that I really enjoyed. You end with some really lofty ideas of where the Apple TV could go in the future. And I won't spoil it for everyone because I think it's worth reading the entire review, but definitely check out the conclusion for sure about some thoughts on how tvOS is continuing to develop, the things that they're adding to it, and where you think Apple could be going with it down the road. Of course, you think about this more than I think probably anyone outside of Apple, and so you're the perfect person to write this review. So first of all, just congratulations on the review. I know that's a big accomplishment.
Thank you.
And it was an awesome article to read. But I also just want to give you a chance to share anything from the review that you thought was worth mentioning, or anything from the behind the scenes, what it was like to actually make it, because I think it must have been quite a journey for you.
Oh, absolutely. So during WWDC, I talked with John Voorhees and Federico Vitici of MacStories, who said that they would like to work on something in the future, only to find out on my birthday of all days that future would be now. So I was approached to write the tvOS 17 review. Kind of short notice in that regard compared to the annual reviews for iOS and Mac. So I'm hoping I was able to cover everything. All the feedback's been really good. which I'm really, really happy about. And yeah, it was a night and day writing process. I think the thing that I was most happy about was the end, because we talk about lofty ambitions for Apple TV and tvOS as a platform. And I remember writing it thinking, I wonder if this is going to be too left field for some people, and maybe someone that really focuses in on the platform, maybe this isn't something that's going to gel with a lot of readers. But overwhelmingly, that has been where most of the feedback has come back to, with a lot of people agreeing, especially when it comes to Apple TV possibly being a computing platform. Now, I remember the early days of tvOS and people trying to put together word processors and different working elements, because there was keyboard support, but there's never been cursor support. And I do think that might be something that's missing from Apple TV, that should Apple bring that in, could really benefit their suite of apps, and may also help hotels. Each hotel room ends up having a suite that you can log into iCloud just to do quick edits to your work or whatever it might be, and takes Apple TV outside of the realms of just being an entertainment device, which I think will always be the focus. I think it's a device that has a very, very bright future. So I'm really, really happy that this worked out and that this released. I know Mike Hurley had a few things to say on Connected, which I laughed at a lot and really loved his good nature about everything. And I'm really looking forward to his rebrand. I'm going to help him here. Michael Vision. I may have a URL that I'll be sending him soon as a gift in this transition. But no, it's been a really, really special moment. I've always thought so much of Federico and John's work, so it's been an absolute pleasure to have collaborated with them on this. Hopefully we'll have some more surprises from the both of us to come in the near future with regard to that collaboration. So yeah, thank you so much for the kind words, Devon, and also, for appearing in some of the screenshots as well and helping me along with this. Definitely had a lot of fun putting some of the images together, which Federico said brought a lot of energy to proceedings. Of course, we had all of the OS releases in September, which also means that we had some hardware releases, and you went straight ahead and got the new iPhone. We haven't talked much about this in private, so I thought I'd ask, what was the main reason for your iPhone 15 Pro Max purchase? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, of course. So I got the iPhone 15 Pro Max in black titanium, just the base storage. I don't tend to go upgrade on the storage, although that may have been a mistake this year, because the main reason I wanted to upgrade was for the spatial video that's coming in a future update. Of course, I just had a kid, and I want to document his life as much as possible in the highest fidelity that's going to be future-proof. And so the sooner I can get my hands on that spatial video capability and start making memories in that format, I'm going to be all over that, because I do believe that long-term we're going to have more and more devices, starting, of course, with the Vision Pro, but I think eventually we'll have other devices as well that can play back those memories in that 3D format and make it so much more immersive. And so to me, that alone is worth the upgrade. And so when they announced that at the keynote, I was just gobsmacked. I was ecstatic, honestly. Like, the highlight of the keynote for me was that announcement, because we all knew it was going to come eventually, but I think we all thought it would probably be at least one more year. So the fact that I get an extra year of my child's life in spatial video, oh man, such a gift. So yeah, to me, that alone was worth the upgrade. Of course, there's so many other great things about it that we'll get into, but first I want to ask you, have you upgraded at this point? And if so, why?
Well, I didn't pre-order straight away because I wanted to know more about spatial video and how that was all going to work out. So I managed to hold out for all of 2 weeks. I have the natural titanium, 512 gigabytes, iPhone 15 Pro Max. This is a year, actually, that, again, spatial video really pushed me towards this and the spatial video capture for the same reason, except as we've talked about previously, I want to be able to capture moments with my grandparents so that I can relive those in the same way you want to relive your early moments with Noah. So that was the reason for me purchasing. At the year where, I'll be quite honest with you, the purse strings are being pulled. And so I was only really able to do this with the help of friends on my 40th birthday who clubbed together and gave me quite a sizable Apple gift card to be able to put towards this purchase. Otherwise, I'll be quite honest with you, I would have been happy to keep my 14 Pro. What I do love about this, though, is the weight differentiation. At least initially, before you put the case on, before you put the wallet on, then things kind of even out a little bit. But also just the finish and the way things feel. And I think you put it to me almost as though this was the iPhone 5 entering the modern era.
Yeah, that's the impression I got as soon as I picked this phone up. You've got the titanium finish on the sides. You've got the curved edges on the front and back that just feel very natural in your hand. And when I picked this up, I was like, this is giving me iPhone 5 vibes. And the iPhone 5 was my favorite phone design before probably, I guess the 10, you have to give the 10 props for being a huge redesign. But I still think fondly about that phone, just the way it felt to use. And I really feel like this is the closest we've gotten back to that. It feels very natural. As you said, it feels a lot lighter without the stainless steel sides. I think that really does make quite a difference. So yeah, design-wise, I think this one is a huge win. And then, of course, you got the smaller bezels on the front, which look great. I don't know about you, but when I'm playing Jetpack Joyride now, I notice my little character's all the way at the top because I'm resting my hand a little too far into the screen. And so I have to adjust my grip just a little bit, but it does look amazing. Yeah, design-wise, I think this thing is just incredible. And of course, the other big change to the design this year is the action button on the side in place of the mute switch. And as someone who didn't make a lot of use of the mute switch, I've got to say the action button has been so much more useful for me day to day than the mute switch ever was. And of course, we've got the mute toggle in Control Center now, so you can always still silence your phone even if you change the action button to something different. So I wanted to ask you, how are you using the action button? You do anything fun with it?
So it did take a little while. It probably took me about a week of owning the iPhone 15 Pro Max before I did anything with the action button. But this past week, I've had some time to kind of work on focus modes and different home screens and stuff. Honestly, things that I've let go the last couple of years where I haven't really implemented everything that iOS can do. But, for example, I have Shazam in my screen time focus mode, and that's thanks to an idea from Jonathan Reed, who is now the community manager over at MacStories, a camera trigger in my normal focus, and then I have a flashlight for my cinema mode focus, so I can find a seat nice and easy if on a rare occasion I am showing up after the lights have dimmed in my local cinema. What are you doing with the action button at the moment?
Very nice. I love the contextual use of yours, how it's based on your focus mode. I think that's really great. And it's awesome that Shortcuts allows you to do that. I took a little bit of a different approach. I'm taking advantage of the new option in the Settings app called Show Folder. It's also under Shortcuts, but basically what it does is it brings up this new UI where it shows you all the shortcuts in a folder, and they're these little circles with the icon in a grid, and it looks really neat. Mostly I tried it out just to try out the new UI, and then I found out that for me personally, my use of the action button kind of doesn't depend as much on what focus mode I'm in. I kind of just want it to be able to do a few specific things quickly, no matter what focus mode I'm in or what context I'm in. And so I've assigned 7 shortcuts to that folder, and then when I hit the action button, it just pulls up that folder. And it is limited to 7. You can't have more than that. So I actually have more than 7 in that folder, but I kind of shuffle them around, kind of trying out which ones I want. And I've come to the conclusion, I do have camera because I always want instant access to my camera. I've got things like taking a quick note, taking a quick reminder, logging a transaction in my budget, stuff like that. But just little things that I do every day that are usually like 6 or 7 clicks. And now it's just 1. Now, the only issue with that is if you run the action button before unlocking your phone, it will time out pretty quickly. And so you have to make sure to unlock your phone before pushing that action button if you're running a longer shortcut. So like if I'm entering a bunch of text, I'll get halfway through a sentence and then, that'll disappear and my input will be gone. So anyway, that's a habit I've had to get into. Hopefully that's something Apple will lengthen the time on eventually. But anyway, that show folder option I think is really cool and versatile. If you're not going to go the approach that you did, Sigmund, with focus modes, I think the show folder is another great option for the action button to just run a series of shortcuts very, very quickly.
Now, I think the big thing we have to talk about with the iPhone, and probably the main reason we both went with the Pro Max version, is the addition of the new telephoto camera with the 5x zoom. I will tell you, I've tried to use this a number of times during London Film Festival. It's probably too much zoom.
Oh.
For most circumstances. And so I'm not able to get the perfect crop. And obviously, when you go down from 5, then you get into the digital zoom territory. So I haven't had the best experience with the 5x zoom. What I have had a great experience with, though, is being able to attach an external USB-C drive, because, of course, the new iPhones are USB-C, and being able to capture video or photos in high quality, and even in log, which is something new as well for the iPhone. Direct to the hard drive, ready to grade after the fact, which I think is so, so cool. Long gone are the days where we would capture, I can't even remember what OS version this was, but there was a time when you could capture directly with a filter, and if you didn't like that look later on, you were stuck with it, pretty much. I'm excited to see, and I'm kind of questioning how spatial video capture will work, and if you'll be able to capture spatial video in the same way directly to an external drive. And I gotta say also, just to be able to plug everything in with one cable is an absolute godsend. How are you finding the 5x zoom, and what are your thoughts on the cameras so far from a filmmaking perspective, even if it is just home movies, because you're a dad now.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have a lot of use for the 5X camera. I go to a lot of kids sporting events or kids programs, things like that, where you can't get super close. I mean, I guess if you show up 2 hours early and you beat all the other parents, but personally, I usually end up somewhere in the middle. And so I usually end up using the digital zoom in those scenarios and going past the 3X that previous iPhones offered. And so I think the 5X would be great for that. And I'm actually surprised by the quality of it. Usually the telephoto lens makes some sacrifices when it comes to light capture and color quality and things like that. But this one, at least so far, the times that I've used it, especially in really good lighting conditions, it just captures really beautiful pictures, which I appreciate for sure. On the video side, I think having that 5X zoom is going to be great, but I think it's really going to be a test for the stability of the iPhone, the stabilization. I've actually seen a couple people experiment with using action mode with the 5X camera and getting some of that extra smoothing in. I think that might be something I'm going to use even for just like day-to-day memories and stuff like that. I think that will be a useful tool. But yeah, I'm very excited about all the possibilities that are opened up with this Pro Max camera. And I'm going to have to get some kind of hard drive solution for capturing spatial video, I think. I'll probably end up putting it all in iCloud, which means I'm probably going to have to upgrade my iCloud storage. But at least...
Oh, no.
I just like to have everything available everywhere. But at least for that initial capture, I would probably fill up my phone pretty quickly using that spatial video. So I think I'll probably need the hard drive at least as an intermediary. But I imagine we're going to see a nice suite of iPhone-specific accessories for video capture coming pretty soon, I would say. So yeah, the iPhone camera is really exciting. There's some people already doing some cool stuff with it. Olivia Rodrigo, her most recent music video, Get Him Back, was filmed with the iPhone, and she and Apple are really buddy-buddy right now, really using that video to promote the new iPhone, which is cool to see. Apple's work on the camera is always incredible, and this year I think they just took it to a whole other level, and I'm so impressed.
All right, case-wise, what did you go with this year?
Same I go with every year. Nothing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I haven't carried a case on my iPhone in a long time. I've had pretty good luck with it, but I'm also on the iPhone upgrade program, so I have Apple Care if something ever happens. Thankfully, that doesn't happen very often because it is a bit of a pain still, and you still have to pay a fee. But yeah, I'm going caseless. What about you?
So last year, I went caseless, and I've gone caseless for the last few years, in fact. But last year, I was at a wedding like a week into having the new iPhone, and I dropped it on the wedding day and had a little scratch. It was a little kind of deep scratch, but it just missed the camera sensors. So that could have been difficult. And because it's just a scratch and not a breakage, Apple Care Plus doesn't really cover those kind of damages. So I was like stuck with an imperfect phone. So this year, I've really babied the phone. I've got a case. I got the clay silicone case, and I have a screen cover as well. But on top of that, I sold my AirPods Pro Lightning and had been wearing AirPods Max around everywhere for a couple of weeks in order to get the new USB-C version. And there are a few differences. I mean, of course, first off, the big thing is I don't need a lightning cable along with a USB-C on my bedside dresser. But also, the AirPods Pro 2 with USB-C have IPX54 dust resistance alongside a new acoustic architecture, which honestly delivers no perceivable differences in fidelity right now. But this new hardware change can do uncompressed lossless audio wirelessly with the Apple Vision Pro, which of course we both have our hearts set on next year. It's not FLAC or high res at 24 bits, just under at 20 bits being delivered, but higher than the 16-bit that we have got used to through CD quality. And we know that that is specifically when being paired with Apple Vision Pro next year. Who knows? I think there's more to this story than has been said so far, because I think we're very, very close to wireless lossless. I'm very, very excited about it. The one thing I wish they would have done, though, Devon, I would have loved a battery life bump, as I wear my AirPods Pro almost all day long. 5.5 hours on the single charge is still very, very impressive with active noise cancellation and spatial audio, which will, of course, cover the duration of any movie you throw at it, including what we heard just this past week from Ridley Scott, a over 4-hour cut of the upcoming epic Napoleon.
That's right. You want to make sure your AirPods Pro are fully charged for this one. Ridley Scott announced that he'll be taking full advantage of streaming by releasing a lengthy director's cut on Apple TV Plus that will put more emphasis on the love story between Joaquin Phoenix's Napoleon and Vanessa Kirby's Empress Josephine that drives the upcoming epic. Interestingly, 5 minutes have already been chopped between an interview given to Total Film Magazine and last week's Deadline Contenders event in London. So I think the director's cut is still a work in progress. But as soon as the film comes to Apple TV Plus, I think we'll both be checking probably that extras tab to see if we can get the director's cut as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think this is one of the elements in my tvOS review that I talked about different presentations. Now I was talking more like IMAX and big screen formats, but different cuts definitely comes into that idea for the video player, which I hope we do end up seeing. And alongside these different cuts, there are, of course, different presentations when Napoleon does release in cinemas internationally on November 22nd, because it will be both available in laser projection through IMAX and 70mm presentations. The one I'm going for is a 70mm presentation. There is something really special about seeing film projected that IMAX, as grand as those presentations are, just doesn't quite meet. from a purist point of view. So really, really looking forward to this releasing in cinemas, but just as much so for the director's cut. Very, very cool.
Sticking with releases, Apple Studios' first publicly announced production has finally set its premiere date. Masters of the Air will debut January 26th, 2024. The follow-up to HBO's Band of Brothers in the Pacific comes courtesy of Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, and Gary Goetzman. A salute to the 8th Air Force who helped defeat the Nazis in World War II. The series is based on Donald L. Miller's book of the same name, scripted by John Orloff, and stars Oscar nominee Austin Butler, Callum Turner, Anthony Boyle, Nate Mann, Rafferty Law, Oscar nominee Barry Cogan, Josiah Cross, Brandon Cook, and Kuti Gatwa. An impressive cast, really impressive creative team. Quite a long process to get here. How long ago did they announce this one, Sigmund? Was it 2019?
Yeah, 2019. And this was the first to make use of the studios that were built for Apple Studios out in LA, I think it was. This has been a long time coming. And whilst I have seen the HBO shows, Band of Brothers in the Pacific, which this follows on from, obviously very similar themes, I think it's going to be extra special. And just looking at the casting in this, special props, I think, to casting directors on many, many projects. I've seen Pacific and Band of Brothers on HBO. I don't know if you have, though, Devon.
I have not, and I'm curious if Apple's going to do the same thing they did with, was it Long Way Down, where they licensed the previous series that led up to it, put those on Apple TV Plus as well. Or they could maybe do something where they do like a limited window, where they have the also available on Apple TV Plus. They've done that with certain films in the past. It'd be interesting to see them add those series just for even just a little while to kind of whet people's appetites and get them ready for this series when it comes. I know that both of those are on Max right now, at least here in the US, so I don't know how willing they'd be to license them to Apple, but I think it would be a smart move on Apple's part if they could to try to incorporate those into the service at least for a little while. This is a series that has had a lot of hype, something that has been building up for a really long time, so I think any stops they can pull out to continue to get this in front of people and get people to watch this, I think would be a good call. So I haven't seen them, but I'll be looking out for them maybe on Apple TV Plus within the next few months. That's my guess and hope, at least. Now, of course, we always throw a lot of dates at you in the release news. It can be a lot to keep up with, even for people like me and Sigmund who talk about it all the time. And I know I would not be able to keep up with all of it without the help of our Apple TV release calendar that you so meticulously put together every week, Sigmund. That's much appreciated. And if you want to keep up with all the dates for things coming to Apple TV and Apple TV Plus, you can subscribe to that calendar as well for free using the link in the show notes.
On top of all of those releases, we also have some 4K upgrades coming in the month of October to our personal purchase libraries. So here's some to look out for. It comes from outer space: The Mist, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the Signature Edition, and a collection of Hitchcock films from Frenzy, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Rope, Topaz, and Torn Curtain, alongside the Paramount re-release of Scream 3. So if you had the previous Lionsgate purchase, unfortunately you will not see the upgrade this time round because of how the Apple TV app treats legacy purchases. That being said, a lot of really noteworthy upgrades there, especially the Hitchcock films from Universal. So very, very cool. Beyond that, though, we also got some trailers that are available in the TV app over the last few weeks, and I wanted to catch up on just a few of them. Starting with The Buccaneers, a group of fun-loving American girls burst onto the scene in tightly corseted 1870s London, kicking off an Anglo-American culture clash. Sent to secure husbands and status, the Buccaneers' hearts are set on much more than that.
For certain girls of refinement, New York has become too limited.
I quite agree. He insists that I invite you and your daughters to London.
London. London.
For the debutante's ball.
The Americans, they're all new money, and I'm quite sure they'll be frightful.
We must just grit our teeth and think of the bucket loads of cash.
So, Devon, this is created by Catherine Jakeways, inspired by Edith Wharton's unfinished final novel of the same name, starring Christine Froseth, Alicia Bowe, Josie Totar, Aubrey Ebrach, and Imogen Waterhouse. What did you think of this trailer? And was it what you expected from the synopsis that we have read many times on this podcast up until this moment?
I think the trailer fits very well with the synopsis that we've read. It just seems wild, right? It's just like a romp. Of course, you got the culture clash, you've got the period piece aspect of it. This one looks like a lot of fun. Watching the trailer, I got kind of a Pride and Prejudice type vibe. I think this is going to appeal to like Jane Austen fans, people like that, but with a little bit more edge, maybe. So this one looks really cool. But the thing that stuck out to me most about the trailer was the soundtrack. It's a very modern soundtrack combined with this period set piece, which I thought was interesting. And actually, in the press release, Apple described this series as a music-driven series and gave some shout-outs to the female artists that are featured in the series, including Olivia Rodrigo and Mia Farrow, who you can hear in the trailer. But the soundtrack includes songs from top female performers, including Taylor Swift, Maggie Rogers, Bikini Kill, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, Angel Olsen, and Brandi Carlile. So I think we're in for some awesome music, and it's kind of like Dickinson, I think, where they're going to contrast the time period with the very modern soundtrack. I really enjoyed that when they did it in the Elvis film as well. That wasn't an Apple original, but it's kind of maybe a little bit of a trend that's going on, and I enjoy that a lot. So The Buccaneers debuts with its first 3 of 8 episodes on November 8th. Be sure to check that out and add it to your Up Next queue.
Really looking forward to that. Now, in order of releases and not when trailers were released, we of course need to talk about For All Mankind Season 4. With it rocketing into the new millennium in the 8 years since Season 3, Happy Valley has rapidly expanded its footprint on Mars by turning former foes into partners. Now, 2003, the focus of the space program has turned to the capture and mining of extremely valuable mineral-rich asteroids that could change the future of both Earth and Mars. But simmering tensions between the residents of the now sprawling international base threaten to undo everything they are working toward.
The Russians put the first man on the moon.
That's steps away from nuclear war.
There's no going back.
A 3-way race to Mars.
We're not going to come in second place again.
Today, we take the next step towards a self-sustaining Mars colony.
They're looking for guys just like us. This job on Mars, I could be doing something that I never even dreamed of.
Okay, Devon. So, what did you think of our first look at a new chapter in Ronald D. Moore's space race saga?
These trailers are always so much fun because it's our first look at the new period. And of course, all the different makeup they have to do on the actors. You know, it hasn't been that long since the series started, but within the series timeline, it's been, 40 years now? Almost. Yeah. And they just keep moving it forward. And I love these trailers as kind of an introduction to this new part of the world that we're going to be in. Because I think it can be disorienting to make these jumps, but I think the trailers really kind of help prepare you for it. I'm excited for the new cast members. Toby Kebbell, of course, loved him in Servant. This is a very different role for him. He's playing kind of a country boy who finds himself on Mars. Very cool to see what's going to happen there. Other new cast members include Tyner Rushing, Daniel Stern, and Svetlana Efremova. And of course, all of our favorites, or at least the ones who have survived the past 3 seasons, are returning, and we get to see them later on in their lives and careers as well. For me, the one I'm most looking forward to is one we didn't see much of in the trailer, but we did get one little clip of her, and that's Margot, played by Ren Schmidt. I was really enraptured with her storyline during Season 3 and where they ended it, and I'm excited that they included her, at least a little tease of getting to see where she is 8 years later in Season 4.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited for the cast, especially Toby Kebbell, being a big fan of Servant. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to hearing him master another accent. Season 4 premieres on November 10th, But episode 1 debuted at New York Comic Con this week. Now, I don't know if you have, but I've been fortunate enough to watch the first episode, and all I will say, to keep it spoiler-free, things really do kick off with a boom. So excited for the melodrama as well as the scientific flair that we get from this show. Talking of melodrama, introduce the third and final trailer for this episode, Devon.
All right. Of course, our final trailer for this week is the premiere trailer for Argylle. Spy thriller novelist Ellie Conway finds herself and her cat thrust into the real world of espionage and danger when it is discovered that her books predict the future.
I certainly hope you dance as well as you dress.
There's only one way to find out.
You and I, we're not so different. Agent Argylle.
Little help? Hold on.
The book is phenomenal, sweetie, but...
What happens next?
It's called a cliffhanger, Mother.
Ellie, it's called a cop-out.
Whoa! Hey! There's a cat in there!
Oh my God, you're Ellie friggin' Conway.
Author of Argylle series, Ellie Conway! I am such a fan!
Oh, yeah? What is it you do?
Espionage.
Would you sign my book?
Here we go.
Who are these people?
Real life spies.
Why would they care about me?
Because you're a goddamn fortune teller, Ellie. What you wrote in your new book actually happened, and you kicked a hornet's nest you didn't even know existed.
I'm in some really big trouble, Mom.
Oh, so now you're experimenting with drugs.
I want all assets on them now. I need her to write the next chapter.
Now, Devon, that's not the synopsis I've read on the TV app. So tell me about your writing process.
I think one thing listeners probably know about me, I'm a little bit obsessed with the Apple TV Plus PR newsroom and tracking changes to press releases about films and things like that. This film's synopsis has not changed from the very beginning. It is a very, very bland boilerplate spy thriller synopsis, basically just saying this is a spy movie that takes place across several countries. That's it. They do not want you to know anything about this film based on the synopsis. So this trailer really was our first look at what this film's going to be like. And I have to say that based on the marketing that we've had before, this is not at all what I was expecting. Now, maybe I should have. It's directed by Matthew Vaughn, so I probably should have expected more quirkiness to it. But I was expecting more like a James Bond type, very serious spy thriller. And this is almost a farce of that. Like it's kind of playing on those tropes, but in like a very meta way. It's about a woman who's writing spy novels. And then it turns out that her spy novels are coming true. So then the bad guy spies want to kidnap her to find out how it ends. And wow, it just, it almost turns into like an Austin Powers type thing. The longer you watch the trailer, especially you see like Bryan Cranston, he gets his little moment in the trailer and he's just got that very over the top villain vibe to him. Now, speaking of Bryan Cranston, the cast of this movie, I mean, wow. You've got Henry Cavill, Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, Catherine O'Hara, John Cena, Dua Lipa, Ariana DeBose, and Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, man. And they're all in the trailer. They all get a great moment in the trailer. So definitely check it out if you haven't. This film looks like so much fun. Not at all what I was expecting, but like in the best possible way. I can't wait to see it.
And I got to say, Devon, if I don't see the credit for the cat in the casting by the time Argylle releases on Apple TV Plus and in cinemas, I'm going to be a sad, sad person. This trailer threw me for the loop. I actually think that they might have gone the right way in that surprise, but if you haven't seen the trailer and you base it on the synopsis, you'll probably move on to something else. So I definitely think they need to do something about that. But honestly, it made for an incredible surprise. And I cannot wait to check out Argyle when it hits theatres February 2nd. So just a few months' time. Yes, honestly, we're almost in 2024 already.
Wow.
Looking at the calendar, which is scary to think about. But what a way to bring in the year. Just like Sharper had a fantastic release in February of this year and really was the perfect start to what has been an incredible year for Apple Originals. That incredible year has brought some quite incredible results as well. Just this week, it was reported that Apple TV Plus was up 1% in US streaming market, at 7%, and on top of that, Apple Originals, now more popular week on week than Netflix Originals. Tell us more about this one, Devon.
So of all the streamers, Apple TV Plus has the most in-demand originals, with almost 50% of them being rated good or above, according to Parrot Analytics reporting, which is just incredible. Of course, we talk all the time about the all-original approach that Apple has taken and the quality over quantity approach as well. And that really seems to be paying off not only in the U.S., but they're seeing this trend internationally as well. So some awesome news for Apple TV Plus. Maybe some non-traditional ways of kind of measuring this sort of thing, but definitely ways that matter and something that really elevates Apple TV Plus's reputation among the public.
Something that I think is quite interesting also about this is we're going to get more into the numbers sooner rather than later. The WGA have recently had an agreement with the AMPTP, so that strike is off. One of the conditions in the agreement, numbers would be made more available to the industry as a whole in order to gauge how popular shows are. So this could be really interesting in the future. Until then, members of SAG-AFTRA are on the picket line, and a number of people still in the industry, especially in VFX, who are waiting for everything to get back to normal so that they can get their jobs back, because there's been a lot of cuts. Of course, that means spending a lot of time at home, and therefore there may be that extra bit of time for some projects at home. New Apple Home compatible products from Nanoleaf.
Yeah, Nanoleaf announced a bunch of new Matter products, which of course work great with Apple Home. They've got these holiday string lights that look perfect for your Christmas tree or decorating your house for the holidays. These look awesome, and of course you can do different colors with them, which is really cool. They've got new GU10 bulbs and a recessed downlight, both of which of course come in many different colors. And then they've teamed up with Umbra for a couple of lamps, the Kono portable lamp, that's like a rechargeable smart lamp, and then the cup lamp that's meant to sit on a desk and it gives you light, but it also stores some of your pencils and things like that as well.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. The photos we'll link in the show notes. It looks like a great little lamp. I'm not normally one to put things like that on my desk, but I could definitely see myself integrating something like this into my setup, especially since it can be a part of all my scenes and automations too. So all those products except for the cup lamp are available for pre-order now, with the cup lamp coming early next year.
Very, very cool. I'm going to be keeping my eye out on the cup lamp. I have actually been working on something at home, re-looking at automation for Apple TV specifically, and how I'm doing all of that. I've shared a preview of what's to come this week on social media. Check it out. But basically, I'm able to do things that just aren't available natively in Apple Home, including dimming the lights on play states and also having scenes action based on the app that is playing on Apple TV, amongst loads of other things that I'm trying to tie into focus modes and everything else. Give me a couple of weeks to write something in a more digestible way, because I know the platform that I've been working with, notably Home Assistant, is something that is quite daunting to begin with. So I'm hoping to do all of the work so that everyone can join in and enjoy the fun that I've had. So that's what I've been up to this past week and what I'll be up to in weeks to come. But what is coming to Apple TV this week for us all?
Lots coming to Apple TV this week, starting with the new Apple Arcade release, Cut the Rope 3 from Zepto Lab. We all know Cut the Rope. We all love Cut the Rope. Now there's more Cut the Rope, okay? Download it, play it. It's pretty awesome. Continuing podcast, Magnificent Jerk. This was an interesting premise about a discovered screenplay that it turns out there's a unknown movie that's based on this person's uncle's life, and they're digging into the real events behind it. Interesting setup for a podcast, very much something that makes sense that Apple would pick up. So check out Magnificent Jerk on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. MLS Season Pass continues. Of course, it's at the reduced rate, $29 for the rest of the season. So if you want to watch the drama as the playoffs get closer and you know what kind of shakeups are going to be coming and who's going to come out on top, you can subscribe to MLS Season Pass in the Apple TV app. We've got a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, you get the full story with MLS Season Pass. When it gets to the playoffs with MLB, you're in the dark, which is a real shame because I always forget to carry on watching beyond Friday Night Baseball, which is the main part of the season, really. That's the exciting part. With regard to Apple Originals, though, Friday sees our highlight Lessons in Chemistry with its 2-episode premiere, alongside a new episode of Still Up and the finale to The Changeling, which has been a end-of-year highlight for me from an Apple Original perspective. We'll be recapping that on next week's episode. And on Wednesday, we have new episodes of The Morning Show and Invasion. Now, it has been a few weeks since we've talked about what we've been watching, and so lots has kind of flown under the radar for a lot of people, but I think we need to start our highlights very quickly with the British comedy Still Up, which I have loved every second of. Have you been catching up with Still Up?
Oh my goodness, yes, I've been staying up to watch Still Up because that's how much I enjoy it. This is almost gives me vibes of like a COVID era series, like where it's very contained. It's just these conversations between these two friends. And, you know, a lot of the storylines are contained within these very specific sets and things like that. But it's taken, I think, to its like fullest potential because the situations that they find themselves in, even without leaving their apartments, oh my goodness, it cracks me up so much. It's very much a situational comedy in the truest sense, where they just put themselves in the weirdest scenarios and then talk each other through it. And of course, they're kind of egging each other on. You know, they're not like actually helping. They're just kind of making it worse. But there's also some character development, and you kind of see their friendship grow as the series goes on, and you get kind of glimpses into the rest of their lives as well. So yeah, this one cracks me up so much, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I've loved this. I have to say, first episode, I've got to ask, would you go to the same lengths for pizza? I don't think I would eat a pizza that's gone through all of that. But I did have a pizza recently, and I sat down to enjoy that pizza with a fantastic Apple Original film, Floor and Son, which is a beautiful Irish Apple Original film that premiered at Sundance Film Festival this year, and not only focuses on a long-distance relationship and the love of music, but also, I think, does a really, really good job at showing the reality of motherhood. Just really, really heartfelt. I loved every moment of this. Not available in Ireland right now. What were your thoughts on Floor and Son?
You know, I'm a sucker for a musical, Sigmund, and this isn't like a traditional musical, but it does have original soundtrack with these songs interspersed throughout, and I've been listening to the soundtrack on repeat ever since. I love the music. Thought the film was really touching, and I'd highly recommend checking it out for sure. Now, I haven't yet had a chance to check out, but I imagine you have, this series that dropped this week, Messi Meets America, a docuseries about Lionel Messi coming to Inter Miami and getting involved with Apple and MLS and that whole world. What was it like going behind the scenes of that deal and him coming here?
I really enjoyed this recap of everything that happened. I'm not sure if I learned really anything new, but as a big fan of David Beckham and what he has achieved from his playing days at Manchester United, Real Madrid, and then later LA Galaxy, to having a franchise of his own in Inter Miami, and that partnership that came with Lionel Messi this year, I thought it was really, really compelling watching. And I have only seen the first part so far, but highly, highly recommend checking it out. Even if you're not a soccer fan, maybe there is something here for you as well. Of course, that's not all, because we have some extras that I wanted to talk about very quickly. One which isn't specifically Apple original related, but I thought was worth mentioning. Study With Me, featuring Storm Reid and Apple. It's this hour 45-minute study session that you just hit play. It's got some cool, relaxing music. It has countdowns for taking breaks and whatnot. I think this is going to be really helpful for people that are getting back to school. The reason I wanted to highlight this is because I saw Storm Reid earlier this year in Missing, which is a really, really cool film in the TV app that centers around screens and tells a thriller. So I was kind of waiting for something to go awry any second when watching this study session. Thankfully, nothing does. But if you're looking for something a little more spicy afterwards, Missing may be the perfect pick for you this week. On top of that, I just wanted to very quickly mention Martin Scorsese's Screen Talk. He was interviewed by Edgar Wright this past week at London's Royal Festival Hall, and I was very, very privileged to have been there in person, thanks to Jonathan Reed getting me in for that. That was a really, really special moment, a moment I will not forget in a long, long time. You can relive the whole hour at your convenience on YouTube. And the thing that I think is the biggest takeaway from it is just how film is changing and how Martin Scorsese is embracing that change, whilst also wanting to embrace the traditional aspects of film as well. Some really, really interesting thoughts and interactions there. Now, of course, as we do every week, and this week is no different, we end our episodes with our Up Next picks from the TV app this week. Devon, it's been a while. What have you got for us this week?
This week, I want to celebrate the end of the WGA strike. Of course, we're all very thankful that the writers were able to get a deal that they found fair and be compensated for many years to come. And of course, with the end of the writers' strike came the return of late night shows. It was kind of the first wave of things that are coming back as writers are getting back to work and things are starting to chug along a little bit, at least in that area. Of course, we're still holding out for the SAG-AFTRA strike to end, and we, of course, are rooting for them to get a good deal as well. But I've been enjoying the return of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, which airs on HBO. It's available on Max. It's one of the few late night shows that I watch consistently, and it's a weekly one. It's not nightly. And of course, John Oliver is known for comedy, and so he's always got something funny to say. But each week they pick a topic that's kind of a current event type thing. It's not news, but it's something that's relevant to what's going on right now, and they go very, very deep on it. They've got some great researchers and writers there who thankfully are now back to work, doing that work and covering important topics. I feel like I'm more well-informed when I'm keeping up with that show. I feel like I know more about what's going on in the world. What I like about his show as well is that they offer concrete solutions to things. They don't just kind of go over the problem to upset you. They try to offer some kind of ways that things can get better, at least in most scenarios. And when something's ridiculous, they also just point it out. There's some laughs as well. Anyway, I'm happy that late night shows are back. I'm happy that writers are back to work, and I'm happy to have John Oliver in my TV app every week. So my recommendation is Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. What about you, Sigmund?
Well, this isn't a cookery show, but it's got something to do with tossed salad and scrambled eggs. Yes, the return of Frasier on Paramount Plus. I'm really, really looking forward to checking this out because I have missed Frasier Crane as a character. There are some changes here. I don't know if you remember the original series, but the original series had his son who showed up every now and then, but stayed with his mum for the most part. whilst Fraser Crane was doing his thing. This return centers on that relationship. And it's really interesting because the son, rather than going into the realm of psychology, he ends up being a firefighter and going down the service route, the same route his grandfather went down, played by the late John Mahoney, who I hear gets a tribute in the first episode, which I'm about to watch after we record. I'm really looking forward to this. I don't know, though, if this has, based on the trailer, the same feel as the original Frasier that I had been fond of. And of course, over its, I think, 12 years, was heralded as the great sitcom, really, of its time. This gave me more of a How I Met Your Mother, How I Met Your Father kind of vibe. So I figured this might be something that you're into, Devon.
Oh.
Am I triggering you a little bit here? I can see you turning red by the very second.
Don't talk to me about How I Met Your Father right now, man. That show, Hulu canceled it after 2 seasons. We're never going to find out who the dad is, or we're going to find out in like a tweet or something. And man, I'm just going to choose to believe it's, because of the strikes, we're losing a lot of things as a result of that. It's kind of a rethinking of some approaches. But yeah, I'm so sad that story's not going to finish being told. And I'm currently in a beef with Paramount Plus as well, because they canceled the iCarly reboot after 3 seasons, ended that show on a cliffhanger as well. Man, it's not a good time for me and the shows that I enjoy. I think I've recommended both of those as up next picks, so I feel bad for anyone who watched them at my recommendation, because now we're all just kind of left out to dry. But, that's the world of TV. If you get invested in a show, you're taking that risk, and it's just tough right now.
Devon, is Last Week Tonight with John Oliver the next one?
Oh, no. Am I canceling shows? Is that what's happening? I'm cursed.
Well, before you cancel any more shows, I think it's time to wrap up this week's episode. It's been such a pleasure having you back and doing this again. We will be back next week, I promise you that. But until then, how can everyone find us and contact us with any feedback, whether that's a tvOS feedback or maybe some feedback on The Changeling following its season finale this week?
Yes, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes. You can email the show or send us an iMessage to mrolfm@screentimes.net. And of course, if you have feedback on the podcast itself, we would love for you to leave us a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. We always appreciate hearing from you there. Thanks again so much for listening. It's awesome to be back. The two of us will be back next week to talk the Pigeon Tunnel and recap The Changeling. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and
good night, Seattle.